that was well attended, and they loved helping. And anyway, just it was a great project, and hopefully we can do something like that again.
Fantastic.
Thank you. That's so great.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Storer, and it was my privilege to coordinate the painting of fire hydrants in the city. So, all said and done, we had 94 teams of at least 3 people who painted fire hydrants in the city. That represented about 350 volunteers that put about 800 hours into painting fire hydrants. About 475 fire hydrants were painted, and about $840 worth of product, paintbrushes, supplies needed to paint the fire hydrants were donated by all of the neighborhoods that contributed to this project on the day. It is very satisfying to walk around Springville and to drive around Springville and see the beautiful new fire hydrants that are freshly painted.
How many?
Yes, it is.
How many people said? Did you say 390?
About 350 people
Wow.
showed up to paint fire hydrants. So
That's impressive.
about 800 man hours, counting the organizing and the people who didn't go paint, like myself, who were at the park organizing and putting kits together and those kind of things.
They look really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And last, those are the kits. That was out of, those are the police kits. That slides out of order.
So
And
do the police carry these kits in their cars
In the back
so
of
that
their cars.
when they're needed, they've got them handy there?
It's a way for the police not to seem like the bad guys when they have to remove children from their families.
Also, when they know what kind of calls are going on, when I visited with them, when I brought them, they'll take some with them.
Good.
They probably should carry them.
Excellent.
And last, volunteers from our neighborhood groups helped fill the needed man hours required for the Arts Festival. Kelly Wildermood indicated that she needed about 500 man hours to fill the volunteer slots needed for the festival. And we don't have numbers from how many in our neighborhoods participated, but the festival went off great. Now, Lorraine Nielsen's going to take a minute and explain one of the reasons we're here tonight.
We are, I am here for the youth in our community. We do have an ongoing need for service opportunities. And I'm just going to share a little bit. So as you are aware, there are many causes for commotion in our society. And physiologically and emotionally, there are significant health reasons for giving service, in addition to the uniting effect it provides for a group or a community. Service is one of the items my friend Cassandra Bess, who is a licensed clinical social worker, prescribes to help stop suicidal tendencies in her teenage patients as well as others. A hormone is released as people give service or show kindness. And I'm happy to provide you with studies and more information about this valuable piece of information. Youth and their parents are looking for service options, whether they are a part of the youth city council that's in place or if they want to serve with other entities. And there's lots of other entities, as you're aware, through the schools, through church organizations where they do want to serve. Service is a requirement for many scholarships. The youth are coming up with creative ways to serve, and it would be helpful for them to draw from city service needs posted on justserve.org. Logistically, I recognize that this may require some process adjustments, but I believe the dividends will be well worth it.
Thank you. So our request tonight is this. Clearly, Springville has the mentality to be a place where people serve. They want to join and they want to get things done, and they want it to be meaningful. We have the platform of Just Serve where all these projects were posted on this day of service. And currently, Stacy Child has several city projects posted on Just Serve. We would ask the City Council to encourage every department to identify ways volunteers can serve the city needs by posting projects on Just Serve that would be unique for youth groups, families, and individuals to help. Especially, we encourage the City Council to work with the departments and the city organizations to identify for next year's day of service meaningful projects that can be done. People are now somewhat clued into the idea that this day of service will be an annual event, and we think it meshes well with the Arts Festival, giving families a chance to work together and then play together and enjoy time downtown with the festival. Tonight, we're just hoping to put this request on your radar, that all departments kind of be put on alert, that we would love these projects to be thought of, identified, and put on Just Serve. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
I kind of want to clap. Good job.
Oh, that was so awesome.
Excellent.
And this is why Springville is such a wonderful place to live. We've got great people here. We've got people that love the city and love to pitch in and do these kinds of service projects. So we're very happy about this. Thank you. Thanks, ladies, for organizing that and putting that together for us, and we really appreciate that. Okay. The next one, Susan Tweed, on some traffic and safe routes to school, I believe, if I'm understanding your request right.
I've come because of the buildings that are going up just east of Meadowbrook Elementary, and we are very concerned in that area about some of the changes that are coming. And I don't know how many of you have been down 950 West, but sometimes the speed on that road gets up to 55 miles an hour. And I've been told by some people that we don't have enough police officers because Springville is growing so much that we don't have enough police officers to help the poor school kids as they're going across there. And we've had crossing guards who have almost got run over because people don't want to stop for them. And now we've got, little kids coming from everywhere. And so it's kind of going to be a very interesting situation if you go ahead and let the buildings go as high as what somebody said. They're supposed to be, raising the height of those buildings. And we also have thought that if you raise those buildings as high as what they've said they're thinking of doing, all those people in those balconies can look down into our backyards. And we're kind of going, wait a minute, we have 6-foot privacy fences for a reason, and we don't really want to have somebody looking down in our backyard, because maybe we want to walk out there in our PJs or something, And so there's a bunch of us over in that area that are just kind of going, we really don't think it's very smart to try and put those buildings as tall as what has been proposed on rating them up high. So that's my complaint.
Thank you. We've got a few other public comments that have been requested that fall in line somewhat with what Ms. Tweed has talked about. We do have an agenda item on that, and we'll just hold those to that agenda until we get to that agenda item. So that will conclude our public comment period until we bring these others back up with that agenda item. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
Were we going to move somewhere else? Oh, the
We just need
no.
to-
I'll motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. This is a roll call vote. Liz?
Yes.
Jason? Jason's not here. Chris?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Craig?
And yes, Craig.
Okay, the consent agenda is approved as written. We'll move on to the regular agenda. Item number 6, consideration of a resolution approving the naming of Cherry Ridge Park located at approximately 1900 East and 4 South. Stacy is going to present that for us. Stacy is our Parks and Recreation Director.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. I wanted to give you a quick history about the area where the new bike park is going to be. That area was purchased years ago by the Charrington family up on that east bench, and they had a huge cherry orchards up there from what I understand. And those cherries went throughout the United States. They they would pick them and box them up and put them on the train to go throughout the United States. Recently, we had the Charrington family approach us. The city purchased where our bike park is going to be. It's up at the top of 4 South and 1900 East, right up where our new tank is. So that's where our bike park is going to be, but the Charrington family reached out to us and asked that we would consider a name as Cherry Ridge Bike Park for that area. And they wrote a letter to Council Member Chris Sorensen, and I just thought I'd read a little bit of it to you. It just says, as a family, we hope that the naming of the park will serve to preserve the history of the area, and that a plaque be placed in that area honoring former Springville City Mayor Amiot Charrington and his family. He left the construction business and purchased much of Springville's East Bench, where he planted cherry orchards because he said that he thought it would be a great place to raise children. As a boy, I was told that his orchards were among the largest in the state of Utah. I know that from this location, the Charringtons packed and shipped cherries throughout the United States. And so they just asked that we consider the name of Cherry Ridge Bike Park for that area in honor of that family. And so tonight we just bring a resolution to you requesting that name for the new park.
Great. Thanks,
Any
Stacy.
questions or discussion?
Do you have any comments?
I'll just say, the person that reached out to me is Tom Charrington. He's a friend of mine. We graduated in '70, and that, for those that don't know, there really were a lot of sugar beet fields up there, and a lot of orchards. They've since become subdivisions. There are no cherry orchards up there now, full orchards. And the city had originally thought of calling it Charrington Park in honor of the family, but the family thought that it was a little bigger than that, and some of the descendants were not just Charringtons, but Murdochs and others, and that maybe naming it more a name that's brings back the memory of what it was, a Cherry Ridge. And then the bike park is what it's going to be known as also. And I think we were very accommodating to work with them, and they're very happy with the thought, and thought the plaque naming the Emmett Charrington, who was the mayor, and his children at the park on a plaque would be a good way to honor them rather than just calling it Charrington Park. But still kind of keeps it in mind, but not having it directly named after them. And they're real excited that we're willing to do that. So it's a great family. If any of you knew the Charringtons, some of you know Pat Jensen that lives up on, she was a Charrington, and there's several others that live in Mapleton and around. Jan, can't remember Jan's last name, but she was a Charrington, and so it's a good way. And especially I like what Stacy mentioned, that we're trying to honor the past of Springville and keep that in memory, what it was. And one of the things I requested, and we would do anyway, was to plant some cherry blossom trees throughout the park as a memory for that. Kind of be a nice, fun place to remember what was up there. So,
Awesome, thank you. Okay. Can
I would make the motion, if I may. A motion to approve resolution number 2022-44, approving the name of Cherry Ridge Bike Park for the new park to be built at approximately 1900 East and 4 South in Springville.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. That's a roll call vote. Chris?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. Craig?
Craig, yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pop you. Okay, we've made a decision to switch items number 7 and 8. Would like to consider item 8, and the developer has asked for a little bit of time to address this item 8 before we move into the presentation. So we've got 3 members of the development group here from the Lafferty group, and I think, Rick, were you going to address us? Okay, we'll turn the time over to you for a few minutes.
Good evening. First off, it's been a pleasure meeting all the city council members, certainly Josh and staff, and I've also had the pleasure of talking to Mayor Packard. I think tonight can be maybe the conclusion of a very comprehensive few months between a builder and a city. And we strived typically to bring a lot of value to our sites. We build in Northern and Southern California, we build in Reno, and we build in Utah. and we try to develop nice product that creates a lot of value for the community. That said, and I do really want to recognize Josh. I mean, he's been fantastic. He's been very accessible, and he's been the focus of a lot of dialogue. So last week I could not make the Planning Commission hearing for a medical reason. So I sat at home and watched it. And I want to say to the community that I heard you. I want to say that I thought it was one of the most passionate meetings I've ever listened to, and I've been to a lot. I'm not here to be controversial. I'm here to be a good neighbor. So I'll make it very short. We are going to withdraw our application for the height variance. And if I could say a couple more things.
Sure.
Just for the record, I did not design the land plan, and I was actually invited by a very close business associate who's a prominent member of the area to build on that site. It's a very complicated site. So we kind of came into a hornet's nest, not knowing the whole background of the project, and tried to figure it out. But I really respect your opinion, and to the extent we build it, I will strive to be a good neighbor, okay? So,
Thank
that
you,
would be
Rick.
it. Okay.
Okay, well, with that being said, do we actually need to make this motion?
Sorry. No, you can just move past it on your own prerogative there.
Okay. There are some public comments associated with this. Those that have signed up for public comment on this issue, do you still want to make a public comment based on what Rick has just said?
Hey, could I just ask for a point of clarification? I just to make sure, as I understood it, you're withdrawing item 8 with regard to height. Are you still planning to hear and consider item 7 with regard to the side yard setbacks? So I think the public might want to understand that, because I don't know what public comments you have before you.
Yeah, most of them have to do with the height. There's a few that also talk about the reciprocal easements and setbacks and things.
Yeah.
So,
Would it be appropriate to have Josh do that presentation, or just have the comments first?
no, we could, let's do the public comments first and then have Josh do the presentation on item 7. That work? All right. Mr. Ashton, Thomas Ashton, are you here?
I'm Thomas Ashton. I don't know the protocol. Am I supposed to tell where I live, or
Your address.
947 South 875 West, Springville? Well, I appreciate that you're willing to drop the height variance. That's just the tip of the iceberg, I think, for a lot of the members of the neighborhood. And I think that is the concern with the height is not resolved by cutting it and not allowing 45. There's still 35 feet homes. They're significantly larger than the surrounding community. There are a lot of other issues that we're concerned about that was, I guess, the pot was kind of stirred with this entire development. There's not a lot of trust when it comes to our community and what's happening with that development. A lot of us didn't know what was happening. A lot of us never heard what was happening until after it happened. I go to the gym daily, almost every day, and I never saw postings at the gym, which is a public space, which I told was going to be on the boards. I swim, which I constantly am looking at the screen as it's right in front of me as I'm resting between laps, and nothing ever popped up on the screens. You know, we never saw anything about the zone change. We never saw anything about things happening with this community. And you've got a group of residents who are furious, an entire community who's furious. There's not a single person I've talked to who loves what happened, who even remotely likes what's happened with the zoning changes. And this kind of continues on with each and every time we seem to come to a city council meeting or a development meeting, we see that there are yet again more asks from the developer. We want more. And as somebody who grew up in a household where my father owned properties, he developed small communities, it's there's a point when you are at the detriment of the surrounding neighborhood and their properties. Our home values will go down when you put in higher density housing right next to neighborhood and single family homes. I meet my neighbors by walking out and saying hi to them as they're in their front yards, mowing their lawns or trimming their gardens. That's how you meet people. That's how you get to know your community. You don't get to know people who live in multi-level dwellings that are crammed right next to each other with zero space between the buildings. And it's really frustrating to see that as we come into this, seeing that there's constantly, yet again, another ask for something more. And that we have to go in and fight tooth and nail to make sure it doesn't happen. We have to show that consistent passion in fighting every single time, and it's exhausting. It's tiring to know that nobody has our backs except for us. And as city council, you represent the best for the community, not for a developer, not for somebody who's building or who's trying to bring something into the community to make money. And let's be real, developers are there to make money. I've lived this part of this life. You're there to make a living. That's business. But you're also, as a developer, typically you try to look and say, hey, what's going to create the most value in this area? And you build within those reasons. And that's the hardest part about this, is that right now, especially with the housing communities and how everything is going with the housing market, property values are high. These are not going to be low. These aren't going to be reasonably affordable homes. These are not going to be things that everybody can go out and first-time home buyers can purchase. That market's gone. We're getting back to it eventually, but as we see interest rates climb. But the thing that's frustrating here is that nobody has our backs in this community except us. And we have to fight, and we have to go out personally and tell people what's happening. We have to spend our own money. We have to take our own time to notify our own community of changes that are happening behind our backs. And that's what's happening. It's happening behind our backs. There's little to no effort taken by city council, by the city of Springville, by our planning committee. There's no effort taken to notify people what's happening. Because I can guarantee you, if they notified anybody, if our community knew what was happening, nobody would have come in here and said, yeah, let's go ahead and approve for a zoning change in the middle of single family homes in Springville, in an area that's rural, surrounded by farms and fields. And it's really hard to see, because we spent our savings purchasing a home in an area where we thought we'd be able to have a safe area with not a lot of traffic inside of a single family home area. And then all of a sudden, 3 months after we move in, the zoning gets changed and there's no notification of it. I'm sure that I'm on the dock to speak about Agenda 7 as well, so I'm sure I'm gonna have something to say about that, as well as once I understand exactly what they want to change. But that's my thing is here. There's not a lot of trust with Springville City in our community where we live. And I really hope that you guys can take a look at that and realize that we feel betrayed big time. Thanks.
So, but before you sit down, Mr. Ashton,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you're on the docket for item 7. That is true, but we've moved past item 7 with Rick's.
Or sorry, Agenda 8, which you said you swapped with 7.
Mm-hmm.
So the variance for the setbacks, correct?
Correct.
So have we?
Yeah, you, as long as you're up here, you can just go ahead.
Well, I'd like to understand it fully before I have a chance to speak my piece on
Okay.
it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, we'll have you come back up after Josh has given his presentation. Okay. Jared Norris.
Good evening, City Council. Jared Norris. I live at 926 South, 875 West. Neighbor to Thomas. I also want to thank Lafferty Communities for withdrawing that proposal for the height change, and recognize that they weren't really part of that initial, all of the initial planning. But I still did want to speak to the process of how this occurred, and hopefully that can change a little bit for the future. And I think the residents need to, or have the right to hear a little bit about how this occurred. I've studied the city council meetings from last year and how this came about and passed, and just wanted to point out some things. On September 7th, the city council, item 7 was the proposal for the zone change, for my understanding, a complete code change for the city that maybe the city had never even done before, according to my understanding of reading the document. The code change said provides flexibility to design the best plan for a specific site or area without the constraints of the standard zoning code. And I just inserted a little thought there and thought, well, those constraints sometimes maybe are good, right? And in this case, the constraints of having that zoned as R10, single family homes, I think was good. But retains legislative authority to approve each plan on the individual basis. It was approved 5-0. Nobody dissented, with hardly any discussion of what would seem to me was a major change to city code. I was just flabbergasted that there was hardly any discussion and that it just seems like this was being pushed through. Next item on the agenda at that city council meeting, item 8, was the approval to apply this new zone change to our neighborhood that we are discussing tonight, which again, it blows my mind that there was not more discussion and maybe tabled to go, let's inform the residents or let's study this out a little bit more, right? It seems like the city council moved hastily in this. Josh Yost, who I believe is our city planner, said this would be the first application of this new zone change. Yeah, right after item 7. And then on this one, there was absolutely no discussion on this item that I read from the meeting notes. No discussion to approve to now apply this zone change to our neighborhood. And I know we don't have really somebody on the city council that lives in the southwest part of town, right? Which, I don't know, maybe that's something we need to look at as a city, is having districts, right, to ensure that each part of the city is represented. Maybe that's come up before, I don't know, I've lived here for 2 years. But I think if somebody from the city council had lived over in that area, maybe there would have been more discussion on this. And so just like that, the city council changed the Springville community in my mind on those two, on item 7 and item 8 from the September 7th meeting. It should have absolutely been tabled for study and further discussion. And like has been brought up before, the residents should have been informed. I understand that maybe the bare minimum was done, but in this case, it seems like more wisdom should have been applied. And like, this is a major change. We better do some due diligence to help let the neighbors know around what we're about to do. September 21st, 2021, 2 weeks later, the city council meeting, item 4, that's where this actual neighborhood was approved. At that meeting, our city planner, Josh Yost, presents the plan to approve this new neighborhood. Seems very gung-ho in my mind that wants this to move forward. There was a little more discussion at that meeting. Some council members brought up the issue of traffic and safety at that meeting. Some of you here, I think, actually brought that up at that meeting. So I appreciate that there was a little more discussion at that particular meeting. But one of the administrators of the city agreed, but that we should just talk about that later. We'll talk about the safety later. Let's just move on with getting this, passed. And that surprises me. One of the council members said the road was not developed and that this plan will have a calming effect on the traffic. I'm not sure where that came from or why there wasn't more discussion. A calming effect, I was shocked to see that. Director Yost mentioned the Planning Commission approved this unanimously, again appearing to be pushing for the development. And here's an interchange that I found interesting from the August 10th Planning Commission meeting. One of the commissioners pointed out that it doesn't change the underlying zone and clarified we are not changing the zone. Director Yost agreed and said we are adding an overlay to the zone. To me, that's not true. This was a complete change to the zone. The first item is simply to adopt this text into code so that we can have something to apply to the property. And the second is to apply this code as an overlay to the zoning map. Commissioner Parker said the zones will change because densities go up. Director Yost said yes, but adopting this zone and applying it to the property doesn't raise the densities. I don't know, again, where it totally raises the density from single family to putting 200 units on 20 acres. And again, I want to point out that one of the council members brought up the safety issue again and said it is a priority, but a discussion for later. I just don't understand why that wasn't addressed or this item tabled for later to go, we need to address this and study this before we approve this. We need to do our homework on this. One of the council members asked about the developer funding more park space, which I think was a good question from the council. Thank you for asking that. And Administrator Fitzgerald said, this is risky because the developer could walk away and develop a less dense neighborhood. That to me seems like, what side is the city on? The developer or the residents? I mean, I only wish that would have happened, that the original developer would have walked away and we could have come back and done this correctly. And again, this ordinance passed 5-0. Nobody dissented. It's just baffling to me and hard for me to understand. And so I hope the city council, I hope this is something that is a lesson learned, that it never happens again. Like it's been mentioned, trust has been broken from the residents in this area. I don't feel like we had a voice, and the city council should be our voice in this and should have done more due diligence on this. Like I said, I don't know how the districting, is that a possibility in Springville to get something on the ballot that the city council is represented according to district and not just citywide?
It's a possible discussion.
It's possible. Okay. I just think that would be helpful if each part of the city had a representative for that part of the city specifically to ensure, because I think if this had been built in any of your neighborhoods, I don't want to, speak for you, but I'm assuming you might have taken a step back and thought a little bit more. No? You wouldn't have?
I live on 4th South.
You live on 4th South. And this, Councilmember Jensen, this didn't cross your mind?
I think it's a beautiful community. I really do. I like it a lot. I like mixed density. I'm for it.
How about 6.5 feet from the fence?
You have a business right there.
Right in the middle of single-family homes, Councilmember Jensen? Yeah, okay, that's great. That's great. I totally disagree with you.
And that's your prerogative. But this isn't time for
Yeah,
we're just here to listen to you. And
Okay, I just saw.
John, let's keep it to our minimums if we could.
I just saw you shaking your head at me, so I thought that was an opportunity.
Yeah, so typically our public comment period is 3 minutes per speaker. We appreciate what you've said. We understand that you're upset about what went down, and we appreciate that. We really do. I would like to address one of your main issues, though, is the fact that there was no discussion on these items. We have regular work sessions. We have 3 work sessions a month, and much of the stuff that we so-called quickly pass through have already been discussed in these work sessions. The work sessions are open and public meetings. There's minutes on the work sessions. You can take a look at those. And much of this stuff that you're talking about, where it didn't seem like we had any discussion at all and just quickly passed it, were covered in depth in many of those work sessions and other meetings that we've had. So I just wanted to address that and kind of make it clear to the public that the city council meets more than on the first and second Tuesday of each month and runs things through real quick. We have long, protracted discussions on many of the issues that you've talked about and come to conclusions. We come to city council meeting to pass the legislation that we've already discussed.
Okay, which again is just surprising that it passed.
Sure.
I'm just surprised. I do have a question. Does the city have the ability to, I understand that the developer has sold it to other developers. Does the city have the ability to purchase lots there that are for sale?
Well, we certainly could.
I would ask that you maybe look into that as a city of the lots that are still available and see if we could change those specific lots back to single-family housing. There's 3 lots specifically right next to my home on 875 West that I've heard are available for sale. And I think buying all of the properties that are available back and then rezoning it back to single-family housing would be a big a big plus and would restore a lot of my trust. So I appreciate you listening. I didn't realize it was 3 minutes. Nobody had said that. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks. All right, we.
They're applauding you.
Me, I'm sure.
Yes, they are.
They are.
Just right across the way.
They are. They're held in the multi-purpose room at 5:30 on the first, second, and third Tuesdays.
And the agendas are always posted at least,
24 hours ahead of time.
but usually more than that. And there's a state website and plus here at the city office. And we have had the conversation before about doing a better job of getting the information out. So that's one that we do need to take a look at.
Mr. Ashton, we'll address your question when you come back up for item 8. You'll have 3 minutes on the next item. Well, we'll address that. We'll address that when we get to that. Say that again. Well, you'll have 3 minutes when we get to agenda item number 8. Yeah, we'll give you 2 extra minutes. Okay, we've got Lanny Norris.
My name is Lanny Norris. I live at 926 South, 875 West. I am directly south of this new development. I do appreciate you listening to us from our very passionate meeting last week. I think if you were there, you heard about it, which I'm sure you have. You definitely saw, and that this community is not happy with what has happened. So I understand that has already taken place, okay? It is a sad, sad event in my mind that this has happened. But a few things bothered me in that planning meeting that we were in. Specifically, when Josh Yost stood up to present his presentation that it be raised to 10 feet. When I first heard about this, I was quite upset. I thought, who is the planner of this? Who has thought this was a good idea? Heard about it, and I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. I tried to think, you know what, maybe a little young, inexperienced. But when he stood up in that meeting and recommended that this would be so beautiful and so amazing, and there's really nothing negative here. It's all just some neutral stuff and great positive stuff. I started thinking, wow, you really don't understand what Springville is. So I did a little more research. And Mr. Yost has a background in Cornell, and he did some building in New York City. Well, Springville is not New York. We are just Springville. My grandfather grew up here. My parents moved back here, and I decided I wanted to raise my family here. And Springville let me down. You city council members that approved this let me down. So to Mr. Yost, I just want to say, I'm not sure I know he's here today. And I don't know if there's still some inexperience there, or you just don't know Springville that well. And to those of you here, if we can't do the job right, and if we can't represent our community here, then maybe we shouldn't be there and do that job. Thank you.
Mike Hansen.
Hello, Mike Hansen, Springville 982 South, 825 West. I want to thank you for hearing me. I met my wife at the Springville Art Museum, and we had our wedding reception there. I don't know if you remember me from previous meetings, but I love Springville. I live here. I'm grateful for the recommendations of the Planning Committee that we've heard. We're grateful for their patience with our frustration and our consideration. We're not just passionate. We have real points. I hope it's not written off as just passion. I wonder if the same result would have happened if we didn't come out in force to that meeting. That's something that I hope the City Council reflects on and wonders about whether or not they're representing the community in a way that the community would like them to. I'm grateful for your service as our representatives. We need you now in the face of additional asks. we'd like you to not allow more changes in the wrong direction. What is the wrong direction? I think you clearly have heard what we believe the wrong direction to be. You've heard it loud and clear. We ask you to serve the existing citizens. It's tempting to write us off as NIMBYs, isn't it? Not in my backyard. You can see my backyard, but put it somewhere else. But is there any question in your mind whether this would happen in any other part of Springville, in a detached single-family residence area? I think you get the same kind of outcry if you took a simple random sample of anywhere in Springville City, the same kind of experience. Not to mention, we've heard a lot about hypothetical citizens that you might be serving. Imagine a hypothetical 1,000-story skyscraper on that lot. You would be serving 10,000 Springville residents by adding density. I think you ought to consider the flesh and blood citizens that you represent right now in favor of those who are hypothetical. I think you realize we have the same outcry over this kind of development over any other in parts of Springville. We recognize the value of density, though. It's a part of cities that needs to be there. You've got to do better with how you're developing. Representative Jensen is not probably in the interest of most of your constituents. And I think that if you were to find that, you know the truth. That is a strong majority that does not like it. The externalities we are concerned about with this development include things like additional parking, additional traffic, and noise. We ask you to hear us on these things soon. We want to change speed limits. We want speed bumps. We'd like parking ordinances to keep them off our streets. We're promised that they will not affect our streets in these ways. We'd like you to put your action where your words are. We need action to protect ourselves from those changes. So please hear us on those negative externalities and help us try to do something about it. The compromise of the community with the last developer, as you know, was a long and hard-fought one, and the community doesn't feel super happy about where they've landed. However, amendments to it are betrayals of that compromise, and we ask you to keep that in mind as you deliberate. Finally, the staff report I thought was very disappointing at the Planning Commission meeting. For example, it found that there was no, quote, quantifiable or direct impact of the amendment of adding height and things like that. I think that those are easily quantifiable increases in feet and directly impact the surrounding area. To make those kind of claims, I think, should give you pause as to whether the staff reports are reliable indicators of information on which you're deliberating with. Number 7, please don't try to lock us out from commenting on item 7. We're here for that too, obviously. It would be a bad political trick to try to keep us out from it, so please hear us. And to cast the work sessions as maybe a failure of the community to come out to them, we're grateful to know about them, but you've seen how energized the community is over this question. It wasn't a failure of the community, it was just too late. If anything, there was a failure on the City Council's part. 24 hours isn't quite enough. Please get your agendas done earlier. We need to change that into ordinance that it's longer than 24 hours. We need advance notice so we can hear about things that are affecting us, so we can come to them. And Craig, please, it's hard to see the smirks when we're trying to talk to people who are powerful, who are making choices. Thank you for hearing us. We appreciate it. And thank you for withdrawing item 8. We would like to keep moving in the right direction on the other items as well. City purchasing lots would go a long way to restoring some trust. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Hanson. One comment on your comments, Mr. Hanson. The agendas by state statute have to be posted 24 hours prior. However, typically our city recorder posts those agendas on the Thursday prior to the Tuesday meeting. So if you want to get on those sooner than 24 hours a day, typically they're available on Thursdays, but the state statute says 24 hours. Okay, let's see here. Jordan Tripp. And please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes if you could, please.
Oh, I'll try, but you'll want to hear from me. I'm Jordan Tripp, 843 West, 1450 South. I was your crossing guard at Meadowbrook. Now, you need to understand, I am passionate about this. I am heartbroken about this. I spent 2 years in that position. The citizens of this town let me down. The police force let me down. The school district let me down. And I had to wash my hands and walk away a year ago. From my understanding, you had to get Destry, the animal control person, to come and do the job because no one would take that corner because it was dangerous. Now you have changed it to it funnels in front of the school, and it is, in my opinion, almost made a death trap for those children because of the speeding on the road, the lack of attention on the road, the amount of traffic on that road, because you have people that don't want to wait on 400 South when traffic starts at 2:30 in the afternoon that got to go to Mapleton and other portions of Spanish Fork up there. They go up to Maine and over. They cut down our street now because it's open. They don't use your brand new road that we built behind the rec center. They use 950 South. And it is a nightmare. I can't even believe to tell you the times I almost got hit. Talk to Sergeant Ellsworth, because he was in charge of me. He practically turned into my therapist because of the trauma that road caused me. I went to the hospital from a panic attack. Documented in your fire department that they had to call the ambulance because I was melting down from parents trying to run me over on that street. And here you are going to bring in 200 more homes with who the hell knows how many cars you got going in on there, and people that are going to be, you got high density housing, which is not bringing in one family. It's going to bring in people that are going to have multi people living there. They're not going to have 2 cars, they're going to have 4, they're going to have 6, they're going to have all of that. They are coming out straight into that school. It's a disaster. I don't know why the safety wasn't. I should have spoke up more about this when I was the cross guard and was right there in the middle of it. I still have pictures, videos, license plates of everything. I was documenting everything of people running me over. These poor children that now I'm in the school, I am in the middle school, that go, you left us there. And I say, I had to, I'm sorry. And they said, well, you were one of the best crossing guards because you cared. You were pulling us out of the street. You were yelling at the cars. I'm walking in the road, waving people down. They don't go 20. They don't even go 30. My own neighbors ran over the cones and drove next to me as I'm in the road. They don't care. They don't care if you're an adult or a kid. And what's going to happen when we close off that train tracks down further 950, we turn that into that walking path or whatever that fantasy land that's coming in 10 years, and you got hundreds more kids walking up this road to that 4-way stop. There's no cross guard there. So you got one cross guard there. You got other kids coming from the north that are used to crossing at that 2-way that are still trying to learn to come to there, but no one's protecting them to go across 750. I called your rec center saying, get your employees to stop driving in front of this school because they're late to teach Zumba at 9 a.m. And they're going, oh, we can't tell them where to drive and whatever. Your own Springville employees won't listen to you and want to kill these kids. I'm not kidding when I say I was almost ran over daily, all the time. I had consistently take time off, and it killed me to even call out and say, I mentally cannot handle this road because of the citizens of what's happening at this school. And knowing maybe a cop will be there because our cops are strained. You got 33 on the force right now to guard this whole city, and they are pulled every direction. I call, please, get someone here. Maybe. I know you got had a cross guards like that was hit on 400 last year and in multiple areas. So it's not just Meadowbrook. But the thing is, Meadowbrook is your new school. Spring Canyon is the new school. And you have high density housing that's coming in. You're going to have citizens that are not of this city that are moving into this city that are not going to give 2 shits about those kids across the school. You got to think about those kids. There are hundreds in that neighborhood. So many, I can't even bat an eye at it. Like, on my street alone, what did my dad count? 60? 50 under 12 on my one road. And all of those kids, as soon as that bus route stops, are coming up that street to that high density housing. How many kids do you think are going to live on those 200 homes? Sorry, I'm over my 3 minutes, but man, I'm fired up about this because safety is not thought about in this city at all. And no one is backing it up. I'm sorry, I know you're here and listening, well, not listening, but It's a joke, and I'm done.
Thanks, Jordan. Chad Tripp.
Sarah, I'll try and keep this simple. Chad Tripp, 843 West, 1450 South. That's my wife. It was a struggle. It's a struggle to listen to her talk about it today. She didn't give up on that job because of those children. This whole project, and I'm sorry that you gentlemen are in this predicament at this time. The whole process of this, we learned about when it was too late. We had literally hours to get a petition together to try and stop this project. There was information in regards to that the process of 3 areas of notification were followed for public notification, that sort of thing. I recall 2 of the 3, one being the library, one being the rec center, and I'm not sure where the other one was. I immediately after the meeting, when that was informed to us, and maybe we can get some clarification on that, but immediately following that meeting, I went straight to the rec center. We were told it was on the TV as you walk in the first door on the right. I sat there for a minute and a half. Not one slide had indicated anything in regards to any development, especially the one we're here dealing with today. So I'm not sure what happened with that. None of the neighbors were notified. Obviously, there was a major outcry. I know it's too little too late, but the reason that everybody's coming up and the trust is lost and that sort of thing is because of this whole process. If we would have known about this, it wouldn't have happened because you guys would have heard us then. You're hearing us now. I know the ship has sailed. But just to go back to the whole safety thing, 8 days ago, someone posted on Springville Community Facebook, how do we get a crossing guard at 950 West and 900 South, which is the southwest corner of this development, okay? There are so many kids that cross here. Today I watched 3 kids almost get hit by a car. 3 in one day, 3. One morning, one shift, whatever it was, coming and going. It is very needed, and every parent I talked to would sign a petition. Anyone have experience with this? And I'm not even going to go into the comments. But it is safety. I live and die by safety every single day of my life. Safety comes first in every step I make. The fact that any dismissal of safety didn't come up in this, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it. I'm not discrediting any of you having children, grandchildren, any of that. I understand you all do, and I understand you appreciate the safety side. But like my wife had mentioned, as soon as those railroad tracks are decommissioned, you're having thousands, hundreds of more children walking up that road. This giant development is going to sit on that very corner. These gentlemen are trying to purchase or have purchased that corner section of this property. These giant high-rises are going, and I say high-rises because they are in consideration compared to what's there. They're going to be right on that corner. It's just going to add. Then you add vehicles parking there. You know, you drive down 1750 West and see that mess over there where that's all been developed and the hundreds of cars that sit on 1750 West. That's what's going to happen on a 950. And these kids are going to jet out between cars and their safety is going to be jeopardized. I have a child that goes both to Meadowbrook and to the middle school. My child that's at Meadowbrook, he's got a few more years left over there, and his safety is going to be a major concern for me. But I'm not sure how this all went through. It was going through COVID. Obviously, the outcry is enormous, but something has got to give. I am majorly concerned. These gentlemen are trying to make profits, trying to earn a living, provide for their families. They're just one of how many developers that are interested in this property. Mr. Simpson walked in here, got his way, moved on, sold off his development, and now it's being pieced out. These guys can't afford to build on it because everybody's taking their cut. So what's the next battle going to be for us? Are we going to be in here every month fighting against the next developer that wants to increase the height of these buildings because they're trying to make money off of their build to earn a living? Is that how this is going to go? Because it seems like we're coming here. We thought this fight was over, and it's not. It's continuing. I know I'm well over my 3 minutes as well, and I apologize, but I just worry as to what the future holds. If they're coming for 45 feet, what's the next one going to do? And they have a conscience, and they sit here and they appreciate, and they withdrew their extra 10 feet, which is a big deal, and we certainly appreciate that as a community. They walked into a mess. But what are we going to do to address that and the safety concerns?
Well, Chief Hate's here. He's heard you. Our Public Works Director is here. He's heard you. We've heard you. It's just, I can't answer your question right now other than we'll have discussions about how to deal with that. Chief Haight and Mr. Stapley will get together and try and figure out a solution for the safety issues that are down there.
Right, and I appreciate the fact that you guys have thrown a speed limit. You have one sitting down there now to kind of, yeah. I know you're working on that process. We appreciate the law enforcement. We understand you guys are strained. But it's just a mess down there. Everything going in, it's a mess. A total disaster, and this is adding to it, and it's horrible.
Okay.
Would you?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so Jordan,
Chad.
you're Chad, but Jordan is your wife. So was this safety issue going on the whole time that she was the crossing guard?
Absolutely.
For 2 years. So you've had a problem with, and Jordan said it was your neighbors that were speeding.
There
and,
were, it's
and
not
a lot
just
of
our
people in
neighbors,
there. Okay.
but
Well,
there were.
all right. So this has been a problem for 2 years before this development was ever in place, correct?
Well, it's certainly a
speeding
problem.
issue,
I'm sure
okay.
it's a problem everywhere.
All right.
This just compounds it.
Yeah, okay, I understand that. Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to make note of that. So thank you so much.
Okay. We do appreciate the passion. We appreciate the concern, and we're glad that you came to discuss this with us. We understand, and we want to do what we can to mitigate any safety issues that might surface. And as I said, Chief Haight and Director Stapley are both here, and we'll have continuing discussions with them. So at this point, that's the end of the public comment. The public comments that have been requested will move back to item 7. If you want 30 seconds, we'll give it to you.
Figure out how to do this appropriate next time.
You're fine.
You're fine. Next time you'll find a sheet out on the front desk, and typically we'll have a couple of copies here. You can just fill that out before the meeting and hand it to the city recorder.
Okay.
It'd be helpful to get that back.
I'll give
Yeah,
it back to you.
yeah. We just need it for a record.
Okay. Melissa Ike. I'm at 578 West, 850 South, in the same neighborhood. And lots of emotion. So I'm just going to touch on the facts that will affect the area. With so many people, there's an issue with the internet. I know this is stupid. doing least important to most important. But it is an issue, and some of us live remote, and that is very difficult with the one option in that area for internet. I know we're getting fiber, but we're on the south end. It'll be forever. The traffic. I witnessed, Jordan, is that your name? I witnessed her almost be hit probably 10 times, and I'm not exaggerating. I drive my children to school, all 3 schools in Springville, because the traffic is insane in that area for the middle school and the elementary school. Nobody respected her. When she left, I cried because then it was the police, and sometimes they didn't show up, and I had to stand out there myself flagging cars with no sign because nobody was there, okay? It's not her fault. She did what she could. Sorry, emotion. The new crosswalk is, I mean, I don't know who thought of it. It was terrible. It's done. We can't go back. Hopefully nobody will drive straight because they will hit children if they are not paying attention. The children are in the indented part of the road. There needs to be a crossing guard in the middle where it is, also on the north end and the south end, because children are everywhere. This is without the new buildings being put in. Parking, I can't imagine what parking will be in that area. You have to think of some structure for people to park. They'll be everywhere, and the roads are so thin right now that it's like Frogger. In all of that area, you are dodging cars. You have to wait until the next person comes this way, then you can go, then they have to stop. It's terrible. And what I feel is most important is the amount of children. I love children. I have 3 of my own, but the amount is horrible. Right now, when I go pick up my elementary school daughter, I am parked waiting for my turn around the rec center on that main road. That's where I park to pick up my daughter at the elementary school because there's no room, there's too many children, and I don't trust my children to walk because of the drivers. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Yost, we have a presentation on agenda item number 7.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, thank you. Let me get this queued up here. All right, on item number 7. Lafayette Communities has requested amendments to the Westfield Central New Neighborhood Plan to reduce the side setback and adopt standards for side yard reciprocal easements for the cottage lot type. I think it may be instructive, and I just thought of this as I was sitting here, so let me see if I can find one. I'm not sure I have, actually, no, I do. Never mind, sorry. For the cottage lot types are a specific type, and each of the lots has been laid out and is, the plat actually went to the council for, not the council, the county for recording today, and each lot is designated with a lot type, and those lot types govern which type of unit can be built there. So if I pull up this plan here, this is a slide from our presentation last week. The cottage units are currently located anywhere you can see a C, and you probably can't, so I'll show you. These 6 lots here, excuse me, these 7 lots here, 1 lot here, and I believe that is the sum of the cottages. So this applies to those. It actually wouldn't apply here because of a caveat that I'll explain as we further discuss the item. So primarily applies or exclusively applies to these lots located here on the east side of 950 West, on the southern half of the project, south of the park.
We need you, yeah, we would appreciate not being interrupted during the presentation. Thanks.
So first we'll start with the explanation of how the reciprocal side yard easement works. It's a new concept to Springville, but it's not a new concept generally across residential development. Lot A has an easement, so that means a right to use, essentially, over the side yard of the adjoining Lot B. So like this. All this lot over here still belongs to Lot B, but it's essentially for the use of Lot A. Lot A, in turn, has its opposite side yard, has an easement over its opposite side yard for the use of Lot C. So Lot A, in the middle of these three units, would have the use of their side yard here, and Lot C would have the use of their other side yard. Essentially combining two side yards together so that the side yard for each unit runs from the face of the building of your home to the face of the neighbor's home. This is a diagram from Lafferty Communities displaying how this would work with their specific designs. This hashed area represents the area of the reciprocal easement and shows how the house to the east, or the house to the left, sorry, or what we would call the house on the open side, because it has the doors and windows facing onto here, would use this combined side yard area, and the house on the right would not have any direct access to that out of the home, and the home would be designed essentially to be more closed at this side. This is a plan showing three potential elevations for the cottages. These have not received design approval. They're not final designs, and so they haven't reviewed for compliance with the design standards adopted as part of the Westfield's new neighborhood plan. But this is a picture of three potential elevations. This is showing them with, actually I should go back to here. Part of an additional request, in addition to the reciprocal easement, is that the side yard be reduced from 8 feet to 5 feet for interior side yards. So not a corner lot, not on the outside of a corner lot, or in this case, this lot on the corner, or this lot, and this lot would still have the standard side yards adjacent to the street. But for interior side yards, to reduce it from 8 to 5 feet, if and only if it is adjacent to a cottage home with an 8-foot side yard and a reciprocal easement is in place. What this would accomplish is it would go from 2 5-foot side yards, essentially with a fence running down the middle of them, which arguably is a pretty minimal side yard, to an 8-foot side yard, all for the use of one of the units. And in the case of Lafferty's design, they've tucked the middle of the house, again, not an approved plan, but their concept tucks the middle of the house an additional 2 feet to provide for a 10-foot wide outdoor living area here between the units. So their request is both for the related requests are for a reciprocal easement and for reducing the side yard from 8 feet to 5 feet, if and only if that 5-foot side yard is located next to an 8-foot side yard and has a reciprocal easement. So you would never, everywhere you had one of these 5-foot side yards, you would have this minimum 8 feet of total living space outside it, as opposed to the 5 feet. This is a elevation drawing. Again, we've seen this of what the streetscape would look like at 8 feet separation.
Can I interrupt you just for a second, please. Josh? I'm getting a lot of interference from whisperings going on, and it's giving me a hard time concentrating. I don't know about the rest of the council, but I'm having a hard time concentrating on your presentation. I don't know what the whisperings are for, and at this point it doesn't really matter, but if we could give Josh the courtesy of presenting to the council the presentation and wait till the presentation's done, that would be certainly helpful to me, and I would assume probably to the rest of the council. Thank you.
So this is, again, the 3 potential elevations arranged into elevation views. It's not a perspective, so it's a straight-on elevation. It flattens everything, showing the separation between the units. And this is a drawing I requested from Lafferty. This is showing the 8-foot separation, which for kind of Utah market context is the same wall-to-wall separation you would see on cottages, pretty commonly on cottages in Daybreak in South Jordan, for a local example. This is the drawing at the 10-foot separation that's the current requirement, and again would have the fence dividing the side yards into 2 5-foot side yards. And again, for the novelty of the houses wiggling back and forth, this is the 8-foot and the 10 feet. So the reduced side yard setback that I covered reduces from 5 to 3 feet. If I said 8 to 5 feet before, I'm sorry that I misspoke. It's from 5 to 3, so from 2 5s to a 3 and an 8, 3 and a 5, giving you 8. I struggle with arithmetic. So this would only be if it's adjacent to an adjoining side yard of at least 5 feet. So you'd always have 8 feet of usable space, and if reciprocal easements are in place. So each lot has 1 8-foot side yard for the exclusive use, which is, if I did my math right, 3 feet larger than the minimum 5-foot side yard in the current ordinance. Windows on the adjoining houses would be limited and located high on the wall to provide privacy to the outdoor living space. The proposed amendment to the code is shown here, and the specific text shown in red and underlined would be the actual amendment that would facilitate the request. It currently reads 5-foot minimum, then semicolon, 3-foot minimum on interior side yards where the adjacent lot has an adjacent 5-foot minimum side setback and a reciprocal easement is in place. That was the proposed amendment language. The recommendation from Planning Commission was a unanimous recommendation of denial to the City Council, and that meeting was in June. From a staff analysis perspective, staff agrees that the reciprocal easement could potentially give you larger, more usable side yards than the minimum 5-foot easement, and that could be an attractive arrangement. The design of the homes is good, and they use these side yards effectively and design the homes to have the living space congregated around these side yards. A key element that I haven't discussed already is that the change in the side yard setback allows for a larger garage, and this is one of Lafferty's key requests. They want to make sure that they can have more than just a 20-foot outside dimension garage, because they understand, especially in our market, that that's really a bare minimum garage dimension, and that if they really want to provide units, attractive units that people can park 2 garages in, they need to have a slightly wider garage, and this allows them to add 2 feet to the garage or 3 feet to the garage. Sorry, 5 to 3, 2 feet to the garage, to make that difference, to make the garages really usable, so that it's more likely that people will use the 2-car garage on the cottage as opposed to parking on the street. Where staff disagrees is that this reciprocal easement necessarily has to come at the expense of the 5-foot minimum side yard setback. This is our position from Planning Commission. But recognizing that the plat was taken to the county for recording today, and that the likelihood of removing a lot, which is what our initial recommendation was, that this is probably a less than likely outcome to remove a lot to provide the additional width necessary. That barring that, staff recommends that if we can't lose a lot, that this would provide a preferable outcome to having substandard garages, and that the additional outdoor living space seems to be an attractive option and a creative solution. So again, the recommendation is from Planning Commission. It was a recommendation of denial, and staff stays with that recommendation. But considering all of the factors and the evolution and continuance of the project since this was initially heard in June, if we can't lose a lot and make space, it's better probably to have the slightly reduced side setback and have a reciprocal easement and have functional garages than not. So that's my staff presentation. I'm happy to entertain any of your questions before the applicant's presentation.
So I think maybe the biggest question, and probably one looming in the room, is do these, it looks to me like these easements don't provide for additional units. In other words, we wouldn't be making these easements in order to cram in another building.
No, the plat,
Okay.
again, the plat's being recorded. Those lots aren't going to change in those lots. The number of lots are controlled by the regulating plan, which was the amended regulating plan, which was adopted in December. So it would not change the density. It would just change how far apart the houses are by 2 feet.
And doing these reciprocal easements, the way that it's been outlined, the way that the developer has requested, provides garage space that would remove some of the parking that's been addressed by some of the public tonight.
I'm confident.
Where they're talking about on-street parking.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm confident that the 21-foot 1-inch interior dimension as opposed to a 20-foot exterior dimension is easier and more likely to park in. I can't say what any individual property owner is going to do. If I had a garage, I'd only let my wife park in there in winter if she begged, because that's where the woodshop needs to be. But I think it's without question that you're more likely to see people parking in a wider garage than a narrower garage.
Okay.
But that's just one of the considerations.
Other discussion?
So in theory, there wouldn't be fences in between the houses, right? The house would become the fence?
Correct. The house would become the fence. There would
So
most
I mean,
likely...
it's economical. It makes great sense. And then if your neighbor isn't taking care of his side yard, I guess it's your side yard, isn't it? Meaning?
I haven't read I haven't seen the language of how an easement, what the easement would be recorded, but that would be, I'm sure, prescribed in that easement language.
Yeah, this is a question I think I'm going to ask for the people here. Just because plat is recorded doesn't mean it can't be changed at the county, does it?
That's correct. Plats are often amended.
So, I mean, they're going to want to know, why can't we just take out a unit or two along the way and create those larger garages? I know the financial reason for that, but I mean, how many units?
196.
196. Okay, 186. I guess if that ruins the project financially, but if it improves keeping cars off the street, I don't understand why we wouldn't at least request that.
We could. We just.
I mean, I don't think we can record.
No.
They would have to come to us. We would have to deny what's there.
We have no ability to require that of the developer at this point. That's
because it was. Oh, for them to take it out. We can either. Okay.
Well, you can deny this amendment. And
Yes, but then they'll build it with the smaller ones.
Most likely.
They would have to, on their own fruition, take out some units to make this work the way they would like it to work better.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct. Right now, we could request it as a city, but the decision's already been made. So they are vested in the plat that was recorded, or it sounds like was recorded today. They were vested in that plat when the decision was made to approve that plat. So again, you could make the request of the developer, but it's really up to the developer at this point.
And for clarity, that plat was actually approved at the end of last year by the Planning Commission. It's just due to the way the development process worked on this one in terms of installing improvements, it wasn't recorded till this point.
So
that-
how, oh, sorry, Chris.
No, I just said that's out of our hand at this point to say less units. That would have to be,
Yeah,
Correct. So that's why I expressed that it would be our preference to accomplish it that way, but understanding that that's a very unlikely outcome, that we may be in the position where the other outcome is the less of two undesirable outcomes, if you want to phrase it that way.
How would this affect the surrounding neighbors? Obviously, there's a lot of passion on this and a lot of questions and things like that we could probably talk about for a long time. But how do these easements, changing these easements, affect the surrounding neighborhood?
The easements themselves, I again would say from a purely objective perspective, the easements themselves do not have any apparent or visible effect on the surrounding neighborhood. They would be essentially invisible unless you were a party to discontent between neighbors who didn't like the arrangement. But from the front yard, you wouldn't be able to tell there wasn't a fence there as opposed to there being a fence there.
But the problem would be between the neighbors in the development.
Correct.
But not affecting the surrounding neighborhood. Am I understanding you right?
That would be my answer, yes, that the easement portion of the request would not have a quantifiable, I use that word at risk, an effect that would be noticeable to the surrounding. The houses would be in the same place, the fences would be in the same place, they would just not have a fence between the houses. That would be the only difference if you could get up in your drone and look at it. And hopefully people would be using the side yards more.
well, and then the parking would be better because you wouldn't have
better,
the
so it would actually-
parking on the street.
Well, I was just
Possibly
speaking specifically to
the
the
garage.
reciprocal easement itself,
Mhm.
because obviously with the change in side yard setback, this is a change, and that's visible to the neighborhood.
Okay.
If I walked somebody down the street and we walked past a neighborhood that had an 8 foot and then walked past a neighborhood that had 10, I bet the majority of people wouldn't notice the difference. But it is absolutely a 2 foot difference in space between the homes. The homes are narrower in this case, and that would be visible, and the space between the homes is different. So the reciprocal easement itself, no, but accommodating reduced side setback with the reciprocal easement would have a visual impact on anyone viewing the neighborhood from the street for these units for these specific units.
But, okay, and when I met with the Laffertys, I did understand and like that. I felt that they were trying to accommodate a larger garage for more comfortable living and parking space in the garage. So I did appreciate that. I'm just throwing that out there. I did appreciate that. Because it is nice to be able to open your door in your garage and get out. It's always helpful.
Yeah, I'd like a garage.
So,
Josh would like a garage. I know you
Yeah.
do.
Well, Josh would like a wood shop.
I know, right?
So, in June, the Planning Commission denied this specific request, or has this, did I understand that right? Or has this evolved into something different than what the Planning Commission denied?
This is the same, this is unchanged from what the Planning Commission recommended denial to you on. So yes, yeah, you're correct. That Planning Commission recommendation was a recommendation for denial.
Do you think they understood it?
What was do you know what their purpose for denial was?
I think they essentially lined up with they think for themselves, of course, they're people and they make good decisions, but the staff recommendation was very clearly that the reciprocal easements are good. I mean, this slide right here is almost verbatim the slide I gave to Planning Commission. But having further discussions with the applicant, further discussions with elected officials, I added that caveat. So really, my recommendation was a recommendation to recommend to the council denial, and they agreed with that. So I think I don't want to say that they necessarily make decisions because I make a recommendation, but it was in line with the staff recommendation.
At that time, yeah. I went to the meeting. I think you're right.
Do you remember the discussion?
I don't think it was that. That's why I said, do they understand it? Because I think then in June, even Josh didn't totally understand it, and that's why staff had kind of, and this is just me speaking, but I think that's why staff said, maybe not on this one.
Yeah.
But then once you get into it and you realize the benefits of the reciprocal easement and how it doesn't take away from the neighborhood, in fact, it improves the neighborhood. I think that, again, not speaking for Josh, but that's why possibly you're saying, given the less of two evils, it's probably the best pick. You don't have fences, and you don't have small garages. They're still small, but not as small. Maybe. I like having the neighbors your fence, because I have a fence between, and it's 3 feet. I think it's a great idea.
Other discussion? Mr. Ashton. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, hang on a second. Mr. Ashton, do you want to come and make your public comment before we carry on a discussion or a motion or anything? You had an additional, I think, public comment or something and a question you wanted to make? Okay. Yeah, come on up.
So my original comment that I had, let me pull it up really quick. And this is what I was asking about prior to this. Is in regard to, let me see. So in regard to how citizens are notified of large sweeping changes to communities, what is the standard process of notifying us of those changes? That things like this are going to happen?
Troy, John, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so in a situation like this, what happens first is it goes to the Planning Commission, and that would be a public notice to the Planning Commission. So there's a 10-day notice that's given. That notice is put on the city's website, the state's website. It's also posted out here. It's been talk of through this process that sometimes it's put in the CRC, sometimes it's put in the library. State law does not require that. So I think you made the comment earlier that the city may have done the bare minimum, or maybe it was another individual that made that comment. The city did follow state law. They did follow what was required in this situation.
On that note, I would strongly recommend that we consider maybe putting something, I mean, we are a city. I'm very much in favor of small government. I'm not in favor of large government. And the smaller it is, the better. And I think that as a city, we have an opportunity to do a lot of really good things. And one of those things I think would be beneficial to everybody is coming up with some system or method in Springville to require us to notify people when things like this are happening. I mean, I know we're not required by the state, but we're a community. We're better than that. We don't have to go the bare minimum when it comes to making sure that our citizens are being looked out for and that we're making sure we're being transparent and having those optics that are good. I know coming from a technology standpoint, I work in technology. I am consistently working with different new avenues of programs, and one of the things I find is that it's very easy to get community lists together and to do either email blasts, which are exceptionally cheap. I mean, we're talking pennies on the dime. And also text blasts, which are also insanely cheap. I mean, this is not an expensive thing to implement, and it's also very easy to do. Moving on to more pressing matters is the easements. A couple of things that I notice about this is, the first thing is, and I guess this is a question for Josh, am I allowed to address Josh and ask him a couple of questions regarding logistics?
Sure.
Okay. Josh, what are the current requirements for easements coming from the front, past the park strip, so from the sidewalk to the home, to the front of the home? What are the requirements for easements on that?
Front yard setback.
Is that what he's?
Yeah, the front yard setback.
The front yard setback for the cottage.
Yes.
So the front yard setback for the cottage home is 12-foot minimum.
12-foot minimum, okay. And what is, out of curiosity, in the surrounding neighborhoods, what is the requirement, the front yard setback for the homes, let's say Century Communities, that's one I actually know what it's called. Just south of that, what is the setback for that zone?
Very variable. I think there's something that I'm going to take that opportunity to jump in and clarify that everything you see developed from 400 West, from the railroad tracks pretty much to 1750 West, is in the Westfields overlay. It's the same zoning that your house is sitting in that this piece was sitting in. So the apartments by Westfields, the apartments on 400 South, the townhomes on 1200 West, all of those units, twin homes, all of those are and were permitted on this site, and they all have variable setbacks depending on the location of the garage, the orientation of the garage, and other elements. And they range from, I don't have this off the top of my head, I could pull it up, somewhere from
I'm trying to get there. So
28, I think, or maybe 30 if the garage sticks out in front of the house, down to something like 15 if the garage is to the rear of the home and all these units are alley loaded.
Okay, and I appreciate you answering. I was genuinely curious on that matter because I'm not familiar with zoning laws when it comes to setbacks for those in this community. So moving on, I know that we talked about having a larger garage being more usable. I can tell you right now, my garage is 19.6 feet. 19 feet 6 inches. I know this because I was planning for my beds in my yard, and I have literally every measurement on the outside of my house to calculate how much sod I would need. So it's 19.6 feet. I have a 2-car garage. My wife and I can park in it. We don't because I use half of the garage as a shop to build stuff that I want to build, and my wife constantly screams at me to stop. But we have the ability to park two cars in that garage comfortably at 19.6 feet, and that's the edge to edge. So I see this as saying that the garages will be more usable by having a couple extra feet. It's really, it doesn't make a difference at that point. So,
Okay.
Sorry, I've got to quiet the floor. We've got a speaker at the podium. We don't accept comments from the floor.
So, and having a two-car garage, but we can reasonably accommodate 2 cars in 19.6 feet. I'm sure that as having a 21-foot garage, giving that extra foot, we still have room to open my doors. We still have room to park 2 cars in there with shelving units on the left side. We can still park in there and open the doors and get into our garage. And again, that has the 4-foot deep shelving units in there. So I think that it's kind of interesting that they're pushing towards saying it's more usable garage when it's a plenty usable garage that they already required thing. The other thing I want to address is the fact that we have these homes. We're pushing back easements and reciprocal easements. Is that we're going from a 10-foot to an 8-foot, and we're giving yet again more leeway to a builder, and instead of saying, hey, let's why are we cramming more closer as close as possible? On that note, having reciprocal easements, I don't see this as a plus for people who are owning those homes personally. If I were living there, having somebody where I have no right of way through my yard on that side of my house, having people right up against my house, kids playing in the back, you never know what's going to happen to one stucco, because I guarantee most of the homes are probably going to have stucco on the outside. That's typically what homes are being built with. If they don't, there's things going to be leaning against your home. Not only that, your homes are closer, noise. I've lived in homes that are this close before. You do hear your neighbors. The farther away is better. Having a fence also helps minimize sound in those areas. Being able to add bushes in between the houses can also help minimize sound. And again, with the street parking, adding those 2 feet is not going to affect the parking on the street. People will park on the street regardless. And this, I think, is a huge concern for a lot of the citizens here, because we're looking at this saying, I currently don't have an issue with parking on my street. And I know that we will, because we're directly south of this. Of all these homes, we're directly south. So instead of them parking on the interior, a little bit away from where they live, they're going to park directly south of their home in our streets. And it's really frustrating to be able to, as we already have fairly narrow roads where we're at, And if there are people parked on both sides of the street, only one car can go through. You can't fit two cars through if there are cars parked on the sides of the streets.
I'm going to have to cut you off, Mr. Ashton.
Okay.
We've gone over the 5 minutes.
I understand. I'm going to
Yeah.
respectfully say that this is crazy that we keep allowing people to push the button on this. We need to be reasonable here, and we need to enforce some type of parking to protect our citizens here that already live here. This is crazy.
Okay, any other discussion on item 7? From the council.
Did you guys?
No?
I got
Well,
Hey, if I could, Mayor Pro Tem, the applicant themselves didn't get a chance to speak, I don't believe.
What's that?
The applicant didn't get a chance to speak.
Oh, okay, come on up, Rick.
Just very quickly, I think this whole request is about a good neighbor philosophy. If you look at 5 and 5 setbacks, you're going to have a fence in between, and with the small garages, guess where they're going to store a lot of stuff? In their side yards. So this not only allows for outdoor living, there's been a lot of discussion about safety for kids. Now the kids at least have a place to go in this reciprocal easement to where they can do things in a 10-foot living area versus a 5-foot living area. So I think it helps safety. It certainly helps parking. The houses also, because the garage is 2 feet wider, have more adequate bedrooms upstairs over that, because it goes straight up. So the bedrooms would be a little more compromised, the secondary bedrooms. So this helps not just the garages, it helps the living space. All of this would be highly disclosed legally to the home buyers. If they didn't like the philosophy, they wouldn't buy it. This has been done often, and you give and you get. You give an easement and you get an easement, and for that, it lives like 0 and 10. Okay?
Let me ask you a question if I could. Mr. Ashton made a comment about the homeowner's property, him not having access to that property. I need to make sure that we understand this properly. If I understand correctly, this is a reciprocal easement, meaning the homeowner does have access to that strip of property. So the homeowner with the back of his house to that easement can go back there anytime to do maintenance on his house or inspect whether the next door neighbor's throwing a ladder up against his house or something like that.
I was getting there, and you're absolutely correct.
Okay. Well, I just
if he has to paint it, we've raised the windows up high, so there's a privacy issue. On that sheer wall, the windows are high. But that homeowner has the right to go back and paint his house or look at it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yes.
Because I wasn't sure if what Mr. Ashton was saying in terms of access to the house was correct, or if I had misunderstood something.
You're absolutely correct.
And I also felt like he had a good point too about the noise. And back there, is there anything that you can mitigate noise in the home that's on the backside of the home, or do you feel like that's an issue, or?
No, I don't.
No,
I don't
okay.
think it's an issue. I don't think you need to go to triple pane windows because the windows are up high. Stucco has a very good insulation factor, which I'm sure Craig knows, and I don't think noise would be an issue at all, frankly.
Where have these types of things been done, these reciprocal easements? I mean, we obviously don't have any in Springville, so we're a little bit unfamiliar with them, but where have they been done, and what kind of problems, successes, things like that have they had?
Well, Rich's son, Rich Garchar's son, now this is a California project, but it's done, I think, all over the country, lives in a place called Mountain House, and he lives in a house that has a reciprocal easement. And, he would sit here and tell you tonight that it makes the house more usable, more livable, because you have more outdoor space than you otherwise would have. It's done often. I can't speak to Springville. But this is not a new phenomenon at all. And I think when you look at safety, when you look at the kids having a place, when you look at the ability to put some furniture out there and have a barbecue, I think this is would be very desirable to the home buyers, and I don't think it affects. I can say that Mayor Packard said he didn't think this was a material change to the approval, is what he said to me.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Mayor Packard. I can't see how this particular thing would affect the other neighbors. Only, I mean, the garage, whether or not it does affect street parking could be debatable, and we could talk about that forever. Explain to me the thing about making it safer for the kids. I'm not sure how that plays in. Is it because we have more space in that easement for those kids to squeeze into instead of being out on the street, or is that the idea?
Yes, if you left it at 5 and 5, I don't see the kids going out and playing in a 5-foot setback. Your trash cans would be there and a fence. If you do the reciprocal easement where there's no center fence, the kids can go out where we put the indention in the house to make it 10 feet, and they would have a 10-foot playground.
Instead of 5 feet.
Instead of 5 feet to a fence.
Did your company design these ones we're talking about right now? Did you design these? Then this will sound like I'm coming at you, but I'm really. If you just said you don't see kids playing in that, then why did you design it that way? Why didn't you design it so they had 10 feet and take one of them out?
Well, you got to remember, I don't own these lots.
Well, that's what I just said.
I can't stand here and give you lots.
Well, that's what I'm asking you, though.
I can't. You have to talk to Tim about that. I can't give you lots.
You can't. Well, okay.
That's another party. That's the developer.
Okay.
I'm the builder. I've tried to design houses.
Yeah.
That I think will make the community better.
I understand
I am
that.
convinced the reciprocal easements do that. It's that simple.
To clarify, Chris, I think you were asking, did you design the lots? And they did not design the lots.
Yeah. So, and you would, well, when the vote comes, I can express my feelings. Yeah.
So if
I believe you sincerely believe that what you're saying is true. I'm not questioning that you think it's better. I'm not. But I just think there's a better option, and I don't know how. You can't do it. I don't. But I'm, and at least let my feeling be known that somebody ought to do it. So
the community would not know the difference on this. The only people that would know the difference are the people that are buying the houses. So you can send your kids out to the front yard where the traffic is, 12-foot setback, or you can let them play in the side yard where there's 10 feet. So if you're really worried about kids walking around with cars, this allows them to play in the side yard. Okay, it's a safety issue. It's a livability issue. It's a good neighbor issue. This works. Any more questions?
No, I was just
I
going
mean,
to
I would like to comment on Chris's thing. I think you're right, Chris. There's a way to solve it, and that would be to buy the lots and replot them and start all over again. But these guys are just here to build houses. They're not here to develop. And to the audience's point, the development went array, it didn't go the way the people in this room wanted it to go. Not even this builder's probably happy with the size of those lots. They're really narrow. It's hard to put a product on that lot. So now, yeah. So I feel for them because they're really narrow lots, and it's hard to get a house that'll live there. And a lot of this, in my opinion, is water under the bridge. And there's been a lot of frustration, and I apologize if I smirk. But it's because I'm listening, and I definitely have opinions. But at the end of the day, I think what we really experience here is frustration with how we got here, not with what we're trying to decide here. And I feel for you guys because you're getting a lot of anger thrown at you, and all you're trying to do is build a house that will sell and that people will live in and have a good time. I liked the upstairs patio idea. I don't know that I was a big fan of the height, but I liked what it brought to the owners of those homes, because they don't have anywhere to go unless they go on top of their house. Now you've pulled that, and I respect you for doing so. But I do also want to comment that you're trying to build a product, one that's relatively affordable, right, and will live nicely. if we do this, it becomes a nicer product in that price range. Now, if you wanted, and this goes back to the 45 foot, if he wanted to build 8 foot ceilings and jam it all down and shove it down into the ground a little bit, he could get his product, but it wouldn't be as nice. So rather than do that, you're just going to say, you know what? I'll stick with my 9 foot ceilings. I'll make a nice product, and you won't have a patio. And I don't know that I'd be able to do that. I'm glad you're doing that, but
Well, I listened.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And I know they're frustrated with me because I like mixed density, and I like to have rich people and poor people and mid-class people all living in the same neighborhood, and I guess that's bad. But at the end of the day, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Any more questions?
Okay. I'll take a motion. For both items? Oh, okay, sorry, I. Yeah, maybe I just overlooked. I didn't know you had it on both items. Sure.
Thank you, sir, for the confusion. Michael Hansen again. I'm afraid this gives us another case of a problematic staff report, I think, in the judgments. Part of the compromise of the community included cottages as detached units. Sharing a wall as a fence betrays that purpose. In the original compromise, the establishment was of at least some detached single-family dwellings, so a large part of that compromise, we barely got any. And now, looks like we'll get none of that kind. Easements do affect the surrounding neighborhood. There's some confusion about the term objectivity and subjectivity here, and it matters. These units are objectively visible and change the open space currently available in the neighborhood. It changes the amount of open space which can be objectively quantified and measured. The reason I bring that up is that it's tempting to take our concerns as merely subjective, merely passionate, and thus ignorable. That's a mistake. The sardine effect is objective, it can be measured. Has a direct impact on the surrounding community. It's not mere passion from your community here. It's not a mere subjective concern. It is legitimate and ought to be weighed. These are things the staff ought to understand and weigh as well. It's not just water under bridge. This is an amendment. It's clear that staff reports make regular comparisons to Daybreak. Our community clearly would rather compare to the east side. That's a value judgment to include those comparisons. Including these comparisons in the report rather than the other biases the discussion. And I'm confident that it's not in the public interest. The developer heard that we want parking, so we get a poison pill option to reduce setbacks. Shouldn't have to make more compromises. I wouldn't trade it. We want fences and detached units. In the meantime, I'll appeal to the new developer. I'm sorry. Maybe you can hear us. Trust in the city council is low. Maybe I'll address both of you. Losing a lot would go a very long way to improving our opinions of the area. It's also clear that the overall zoning has created a lot of mixed-use areas and that the community does not want it. I'm confident in that. Please hear that. Thank you.
Somebody want to make a motion?
What is it, number 8? Is that what we're doing?
It's number 7.
Oh, so I'm like, I can't even find it.
It's on the first page.
Oh, I'll motion to approve the proposed amendments to the Westfield Central Neighborhood Plan. Is that what I need to say, Josh? Jen? I motion to approve the amendments to the Westfield Central Neighborhood Plan. Anybody want a second?
If, just for clarification.
I know. I'm trying to read it.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I bring this to you so you can see what this says?
Will we be allowed to give a comment on our vote rather than just a yes or no?
Yeah. I think the public needs to understand that.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you guys want me to restate it, or do we want to look for a second first? It says, okay, so motion to approve the proposed amendments to the Westfield Central New Neighborhood Plan to reduce the side setbacks and adopt standards for side yard reciprocal easements for the cottage lot type.
second? Okay, you want more discussion? Somebody want to make
Or
another?
they can
motion?
make another motion, and they could just read that line right there if they want.
Well, okay,
I can't say yes or no without
Yeah.
a second, so,
yeah, I can,
and I'm not
and,
gonna second it.
yeah, and well, maybe not more discussion, but just my thoughts on this is that, although I agree that this will make a nicer product, I am torn because of, the citizens that are here that are wanting us to support them. And I do agree that that's why I'm here, is to support citizens. Although I feel like you have a really big problem. We have a really big problem out there with traffic, regardless of this development and before this development happens. So I don't feel like this will really mitigate your problem, or our problem, not the problem out there on 950. I guess our problem with citizens not not paying attention to what they should be paying attention to, which is their children and our children. So I don't feel like I can. I feel like I have to support the citizens of the neighborhood. So that's why I'm not seconding right now. I might need to think about it a little bit more.
I think you bring up a good point, Liz, is that this will not affect one way or the other the traffic. And if any, there was a thought that, maybe one more car will get put in a garage because of it, but you're right. It's not going to fix the water that's gone under the bridge is under the bridge, right? Now, can we pull it back? I don't. The only way we really could is if, and we can't, legally we can't change the way we have zoned that property. We can't. We'd get sued if we did.
Well, we can't
I remember
change
when this came down in December, we were like, wow, whether we messed up or we didn't, there was some legalities there, right? Mm-hmm. And luckily, when Mr. Simpson came to the table, there was higher density here at one point, wasn't there?
Yeah.
There were 24
Yes.
units.
Yeah, and he got rid of some units that in theory maybe he didn't need to. Now, to these people's point, maybe we're still on the wrong side. A lot of people want single-family housing in that area, but fortunately or unfortunately, however we look at it, we've made a decision, and we can't go back on it no matter how much we cry over the milk that has been spilled. It's done. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dragging this builder through the mud for something he didn't do really isn't fair. He just wants to build houses to support his family or whatever it might be. Now, granted the reciprocal easement, if we believe that that's adding density or adding problems, then we can deny or accept that. But we can't change the density. We can't change the traffic. We can't do any of that in this meeting today.
Well, the reciprocal easement doesn't change the traffic.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the density. It's still the same density. And I think that's why Mayor Packard mentioned that he doesn't see how it materially affects the neighborhood changing that easement. Rick has mentioned that it will increase the safety of the children. The safety of the children has been addressed several times tonight. So, to me, I'm having a hard time with this too because of what the citizens have said, the way they've addressed it. I understand their dissatisfaction with the decisions that we've made, but we're just trying to make maybe something that should have been done a different way into something that will work better than it would have prior to that issue. So, I'm glad that Rick stood up and pulled that height thing so that we didn't have to deal with that. I appreciate that, and it shows that Rick has listened. But I think we need to really dig down on this easement thing because it sounds to me like, if I'm understanding it correctly, that it will be better off for the neighborhood to do this change.
Well, I'll share my comments. I wasn't, I'm not saying this is an scapegoat, but I wasn't here when this was all approved. I just came on in January. But I go back to the time when I was on the council when 4th on 4th was approved, which is just by the viaduct. And I believe, can't have the records, I was the lone dissenting voice then with almost the same situation here that they could have done it whether I voted not to, But I had the concern of the streets that there'd be too much parking. And I just felt like for the rest of my life when I drive past there, I just want to be able to say, I didn't want that much traffic out on that street. And I even remember saying they all have to funnel down to the next street. It's not 950, whichever, 750, because it's only getting crazier, So, and I feel like the same way. When I don't vote yes for this, I recognize, and I even agree that the efforts of the people designing and building this, they believe that they're trying to make it better. They're not gaining any units. They're in fact probably losing some potential profit because of the smaller units height-wise, which I was never in favor of the height, never. But I think when this, however it turns out, my vote, when we get to that, if we get to that, will be that I believe someone at least somewhere up the line will listen and say, there's one person that thought it's not too late, and that's why I asked the question. You can't do it because you didn't file the lots. Whoever you're buying them from or whatever could change it, and I want to be a voice that said, I believe the very best thing next to what you're trying to do would be to take a building or two out and solve those issues that way. And maybe that's impossible, but I want at least one voice to say, that's what I think should have happened. Whether it does or not, that's the only solution I can see, because I can't, and I don't think that's going to happen, but I want it to be said that somebody felt like that was the very best solution, not approving the reciprocal agreement. I would go on record to say I think reciprocal is not a bad thing, because it's the people that are living there that are going to have the worst brunt of it, or the best brunt, whichever side you take. But I believe that a voice needs to be spoken, that the best solution would have been to reduce the density a little bit to make those lots work better. That's my feeling about it. And I just want to add one thing. I was an elementary principal. I was actually in the district office when we purchased the property for that school. I worked on the safe walking routes. I was principal at Art City. I got the first crossing guard there. I've been at other schools, and I've spent a lot of time as a elementary principal out in the crosswalks helping kids. And it's a scary, horrible thing, and it's not unique. I think it's probably exacerbated with this school because of the uniqueness of it. But it's a problem everywhere. And just like with your school, the majority of the people doing it are your neighbors and your friends. And my PTA president, when plowing through me, swearing at me because I was trying to stop her for a bus. So I get that, and it's not fun, and it's not real, and it's a problem that doesn't go away very easily. But I guess I'm saying that so that you would at least know that we may not be as insensitive or as inexperienced with that horrible thing. It's a nightmare. I was never at peace until the last kid was gone and they were safe. And I worried about it every day. And that's something we need to, and I'm not trying to get an applause or anything, so I don't want that. I'm just saying I don't want, because we can't respond to you, for you to think that we don't have an answer as far as caring, because I spent my whole life caring about kids, and I am concerned with it down there, and I know that our police chief is too, and I don't know that I've heard a worse story than yours, and so we need to put that much more attention to that school. I've gone down to the gym in those mornings, and I've been scared for you too. It's not good, but it's not just unique to there. Up in front of Reams, any of the schools, it's scary.
I was going to say, I think, I mean, it is definitely an issue, but I I think we need to stay on task.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that this has
that's
nothing
fine.
to do with crosswalks.
No, but that
we
would-
can make it that, but Brookside is horrible. Anything on Center Street, you want to talk bad, you go down to West Side, Reagan, and Merritt. It's horrible. Is that his fault?
No.
Okay,
And-
that's all I want to say. It's not his fault. It's kind of our fault, I guess, but maybe we just protest that schools can't come in neighborhoods anymore. I mean, what do you do? It's an issue. But I want to
I'm not trying to solve it. I'm just wanting my
use our vote to try and solve that and penalize him.
No, my expression was, my vote is because I think there's a better solution, reducing a house. But that was because that we didn't have a chance to respond to that comment, and I just wanted the people that heard that comment to know that we're not heartless and that we don't care.
I agree.
That's why I said it, not to try to change the vote.
But if I could just address your heartless thing for just a second, I would really like to do that. I've been on the city council for almost 5 years. I've worked with these people at least 2 years. I've worked with Craig for 4.5 years. I've worked with Jason for a long time, and I've known Chris my entire life. A lot of the comments tonight have made it sound like we're heartless, sit on the podium kind of people. We're not. We're trying to do what's best for the city. We're trying to visualize how this can help the city. The reason it got passed is because we felt like this would be an amenity to the city, to new people coming into the city, and we hear all the time, we're getting too much density in Springville. It's turning into something that Springville is not. What I would like to know is what Springville is. We're not going to discuss that right now. If you want to talk to me about it individually, I'd love to talk to you about it. I've lived in Springville 68 years. I have an idea of what Springville is. I voted for this development because I felt like it would be an amenity, having that park down there, having these nice homes built there, and doing it in a way that would would be affordable for people coming into town. Springville, to me, are the people that are here. And these people up on this podium, and every one of us do not like this situation being up on the podium. Would rather be down there with you, but we have to be up here to see. But we're not heartless politicians. We want you to understand that we do represent the citizens of Springville, all of them. We represent you in that neighborhood. We represent the people in Chris's neighborhood. We represent the people in Jason's neighborhood. We represent all of Springville, and our ears are open, but we have to make some really tough decisions on what we feel like is best for Springville. And some of those decisions people don't agree with. Some of the decisions we make, we don't agree with each other. But it's a negotiation we have to make to help Springville grow. We want the people here. We want the tax dollars here. We want to help Springville to grow. We cannot continue to grow Springville on the current path that we're on with quarter-acre, single-family housing. It just is not possible. If that's what we're going to limit Springville to, Springville's going to turn into Detroit. Detroit stopped growth because of the things that we're talking about here. We cannot stop growth in Springville and still maintain a viable community. Now, I know that speech goes way beyond what we're discussing here, and it has nothing to do with Lafferty Builders. What it has to do with is what we feel like Springville should be, what we think the definition of Springville is. And we need to take a look at that. Do you want your families living here? Do you want your kids to live here? Do you want your friends to move here? Where do you want them to move to? And I'm not spilling this all out because I'm, in favor of this huge development thing, or that I disagree with all the comments that are here, or I'm just a heartless guy that wants to see more tax dollars. That's not the point. The point is, what do we want to create Springville to be? And the discussion has always been with these people up here, in the almost 5 years that I've been on the council, have been the main concern is the citizens of Springville. It isn't the developers. It's not the builders. It's what's best for the citizens of Springville. That's in every discussion that we have, in a council meeting like this one, in a work session, in individual meetings that we have with staff. All of that is, how is this going to affect our citizens? Some people don't like us. Some people don't like the decisions we make, and we're okay with that. We make decisions based on what we think is right for the citizens of Springville. And with that, I'll shut up. Any other discussion?
I appreciate that, man. I'll leave my motion out there if anybody wants to second it.
Did you have something to say, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, we've spent some time, individually with the developer, and we've talked about this. I really appreciate all the points that all of you have made. First of all, the fact that you clarify that yeah, we don't come into these meetings with just to make 5-minute decisions in front of people. It's like it's been contemplated for a long time. It's been before, like Chris, I haven't been on since, I started in January again. But again, I am fully in agreement with Chris when he says, hey, the best solution is to take out one of the plots, right? To take out one of the properties or one of the pieces. Is there any possibility of that? And you're going to tell me no. Sure.
I'll try to put this into context. I met with the developer today, and I met with the financial partner today. And I can guarantee you, if you ask him to lose a lot, he'll say, hire a lawyer. That's just his mentality. And that's not me talking. I'm not a litigious person. So I can very confidently say that if you want him to lose a lot, you're going to get devalued houses on those lots that I may not build, just for the record. I made a big pitch to them today that, this isn't a project where you can take plans off the shelf and build them. It's a very comprehensive, complex, intimate project. And I think we've designed houses across the board that will make it, I think, a showplace for your city, for that kind of density. Now, that said, I'm just giving you my perspective of my meeting today. If you want to eliminate a lot or two, yeah, you get wider lots and you can build probably bigger houses and so forth, but that isn't what we signed up for. And I haven't bought these lots yet. I haven't closed. And I'm not going to close until I really know what the rules are going to be. And I fear that if we don't build, that you're going to get a real inferior product. And I mean that sincerely. I'll stand with what I said earlier. I think the reciprocal easements are not a material change. I think it, frankly, helps mitigate some issues. It certainly addresses the safety issue. It certainly mitigates the outdoor living. These don't have basements. There's no basements here. So, we tried roof decks to give people a place to go. And I completely agree. I recognize the sentiment of the community. And in defense of Josh, I just have to do this. For the Planning Commission, he didn't make a recommendation. He didn't say you should do the height or not. So I really think he's getting a lot of grief for a very neutral presentation that he gave. And I just have to say that. He left it up to the Planning Commission. And as you mentioned about the Planning Commission on the reciprocal easements, I am convinced they didn't understand it. It was a very rushed application. We were asked to put it in. We put it in. We did not make a presentation. And poof, I think when you don't understand something, you deny. And I do believe there's been an educational process since then on the reciprocal easements. And, I'm a pretty level-headed guy, and I can honestly tell you if I see that there's a deficiency here or that I'm trying to pull the wool over your eyes, I'll be the first to admit it. And I'm not with this. I really believe this is additive to this community. And it's not every unit, it's a specific product type. And if we don't do that, you get narrower houses. They're gonna look much more vertical. You're not gonna have any outdoor living. There's no basements, and the kids are gonna go to a 12-foot front yard. And they're probably gonna have some cars parked on the street, because they're gonna do what the other gentleman did, and they're gonna use half their garage for storage. I mean, it's pretty simple for me, and I don't mean to make light of it, but I don't think Tim and/or his investor are gonna give away any lots. And I can tell you, I'm pretty much 100% sure of that. But that's not my battle.
I recognize that.
Yeah, that's not my fight, and I'm not here to fight. I'm trying to do something.
Do
I
you
think-
have to have the fence between the, I know you've got it planned, the one between in the front, but does you have to have a fence dividing these two places?
They're two separate properties in that. In that case, if you have 5 and 5, you got one owner and another owner, and there's no reciprocal easements, you got a fence between them. That's their property, and that's this guy's property.
I know.
The reciprocal easement eliminates the fence
I know.
and makes it a land use question. Yeah. You know, you gotta put the fences between them if you don't approve it. If you approve it, you lose the center fences.
Okay. That's what I was wondering, if you had to put the fence without the reciprocal.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Or you're gonna have people impinging on other people's property without a reciprocal easement. It doesn't work.
I just wondered if you left it up to them, but I see, I know what you're saying.
Okay.
For clarity, the ordinance doesn't prohibit a reciprocal easement, it requires it. So you could do reciprocal easements, any property owner can enter into, any adjoining property owners can do that.
So they could actually do the reciprocal easement today without any action from the council. The reciprocal easement's essentially is a part and parcel of the ask for the reduction in the side yard setback. And according to the code, no, you don't have to have a fence between your house and your neighbor's house, but most people do.
Well, I think when they're this
So,
close, you
yeah.
pretty much do.
And it's,
These were half-acre lots, maybe not, but these are very,
even if it didn't have the fence, you'd still have to meet the setback requirements, so the geometric issue stays the same.
Could you write the reciprocal so that it keeps it for 10 feet? That would be even more.
Then they lose the parking.
What's that?
Reciprocal easement, but keep it 10 feet.
that doesn't help your garage and living space.
The parking.
Gives you on-street parking and small garage too,
But
And small bedrooms.
and small bedrooms.
you know, we can talk about giving them, and them, I assume, are the people that are moving in there.
Yeah.
It isn't the neighborhood. That was my point before. It's not this reciprocal agreement. I can't possibly see, regardless of what's been said, I can't possibly see how shifting this is going to affect the neighborhood. There's no more density. I just can't see how approving a reciprocal agreement can affect the surrounding neighborhood.
No,
Yeah, they're the
It's-
two different issues are being discussed, right? And the request is actually to reduce the easement from 10 feet between the houses to 8.
To accommodate the setback.
And so the consideration was, in return for that, there would be a reciprocal easement over it. So the reciprocal easement does not affect the neighborhood, it's the distance between the houses.
Yeah,
But
I get that, and that's what I'm saying. It's not, it isn't materially affecting the neighborhood, and that's the point the mayor made when I talked to him about this.
Yeah, but again, the setback in the ordinance, it only does, it's one line. It reduces the distance between the houses from 10 feet to 8 feet.
Mhm.
And then requires reciprocal easement to go in there. You could strike that if you wanted, if you're comfortable with the houses being 8 feet apart instead of 10.
but they're only 8 feet apart in the in the living area. Then there's 10, isn't that right? Where it just juts in a little bit, and so I don't.
So we gave up square footage to give more outdoor living.
Yeah.
that kids can play in and be safe.
I,
Well, I really like what you say though, Mike. I mean, you got to get back to take, if you take the emotion out of it, what does it do to the neighbors? No emotion in there. What does it do to the people in this room?
Yeah, that's.
And I'm sure they have an answer, but as a council, we have to decide that. If we give them this reciprocal easement, what does it do to them? Now, we know it's not going to affect traffic one way or another.
No.
It's not going to, will it affect their property values?
no.
Well, I mean, that, we have to decide that, each one of us. Does that hurt or help? There's an argument for it would help. There's probably an argument that it would hurt. It's definitely not going to do anything with what is really emotional, and it is a problem, the traffic. But what is it going to hurt them? When we make this decision, if we take emotion out of it, we have to say, what are we doing here? Are we making a decision based on what it's going to do to the neighborhood? What?
Yeah.
Yeah. If we keep it that simple, then we can take a little emotion out of it, then we can make this decision and go to the next one.
Appreciate the comments and clarification.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here tonight. No, with that, with the fact that, again, it doesn't increase density, and I don't see a dramatic impact. In fact, it's going to help the product, I think. So I'll second Craig's motion.
Okay. I've got a second. I've got a motion and a second. This is a roll call vote. Liz?
Oh, am I the first one on here?
Well, I can change the order. if
Well,
you
no,
want.
that's okay. And like I said before, actually, I think that it, Rick, when I was in the meeting with you, I think it's a great idea, but I think for this time, I am just going to have to go with the citizens that think it is not a good idea for some reason. This cannot change any of the things that you think are really not a good idea. So I'm just going to go no.
Chris?
No.
Me? Yes. Jason?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Okay, that's 3-2 in the affirmative to approve the change in the easement. Okay, agenda item number 9, consideration of an ordinance and amendment to the moderate income housing element of the general plan for compliance with 2022 House Bill 462. Carla,
Hi.
it's your presentation.
Try to make this as short and sweet as possible.
You just want to get home or what?
Well, you know. Got some podcasts to listen to on my way home. Thanks, boss. Okay, so just a little background really quick before we kind of dive into this needs assessment. So in 2019, the state passed Senate Bill 34, which made a lot of changes to what, and added requirements as to what cities had to include in their moderate income housing element of their general plan. Well, not to be outdone, the 2022 legislature got together, and in House Bill 462, they expanded the strategies and made some changes in the language to kind of strengthen the requirements for the moderate income housing plan. So the counties or the communities are required to develop a moderate income housing plan as part of the general plan. That's why we're here, because it will be an amendment to the general plan. And then we also have to make a report to the state on the implementation of that we are doing to satisfy those requirements. Allowed, by expanding the strategies, they allowed some flexibility. They allowed cities to be a little bit more creative in how they were addressing moderate income based upon what the needs of their community were. So it also set up that it allowed cities that if they included more strategies, up to 5, then they were given priority funding for certain projects, particularly those with their C&B road funds, correct? Yeah, C&B road funds for cities. So we went through and
did that. Now, really quick, I just kind of want to, a few high points about, or low points, I don't really know how, that's a little bit of both, for the housing needs assessment in Springville. So on the good note, the poverty rate in Springville has decreased from 8.2 to 7.2 based upon the 2020 census. Renter households have increased from 22.3% to 29.6%. These next ones are the ones that kind of really get you. So the median home value from 2010 to 2020 increased 42% to $290,000. And during that time, the median family income increased from $59,450 to $80,696, which was an increase of 35.7%. However, in the August 22 median list price of a home was $508,300, which was a 74% increase over 2020 home values. Now, it was a drop from the July median income or median list price of $522,000, but it's kind of not a significant decrease as far as the overall median list price. Now, for 2015 to 2020, these numbers are taken from the American Community Survey, which is done, which looks at data for the last 5 years. Renter households of moderately or severely burdened, which means moderately is 30% of their income goes to housing. Severely burdened is 50% of their income goes to housing. So the renter households that are moderately or severely burdened increased from 39.6% to 46.1%. And owner households decreased, which was nice, from 28.2 to 21.9. We, like the rest of the state, we're seeing an increase of housing units, 11.9%, still lagging behind the increase in population of 20.3. So that's just the little data nerd in me that had to get that out. So, thanks for letting me do that. Okay, so then this very quickly looks over the kind of a quick synopsis of the two bills. 2019 Senate Bill 34 added the requirement for those for cities of populations of 5,000 or more, and the city is required to report on its compliance. House Bill 462 passed this last session, bumped that up, kind of beefed it up. Not only it requires an inclusion of an implementation plan, amends the list of strategies, outlines reporting requirements, and adds incentives and restrictions, like I said, regarding the incentives if you do more strategies to be able to get more funding. And then also talked about, as part of the implementation strategies, the requirements and timing required to amend the general plan.
Can I comment just real quick?
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt your presentation.
No, you're fine.
This is why I'm so grateful that Councilmember Snelson made these comments about what we want Springville to be. You know, at some point it's not going to be our choice to a large extent, because you know, for example, it's great to think, hey, we want to have these single family homes all across the city, and that's awesome. I'm all for that, but the problem is the state is mandating that we're doing more density. And in fact, they're talking about putting a front runner station in just right over here. And once they do that, then they're saying as part of their legislation that within a half a mile radius, they'll be able to have densities up to 30 to 50 units per acre.
50 minimum, actually, but yes, 50 minimum.
So I'm just saying, a lot of this is pushed down from the state too, and so, you know,
so
we've got to decide in a hurry.
Exactly. A lot of it is, mandated from the state, what the cities are required to do, and they hold out the supposed carrot, but it's kind of a big stick.
You don't get road funds if you do.
Yeah, you don't get your
don't
CMB road funds. Yeah, and yeah, that's very true. So a lot of times it's not it's your state representatives that need to be addressed. So
perhaps they know some. I mean, at some point we can't live in ivory towers. I mean, we do have to. I mean, I don't want to throw the state under the bus. At some point, the state does know what they're talking about. I mean, I think they look. When we talked about ADUs, I mean, I really think we did a good job on ADUs, because it's like, hey, we're going to give a product, and I don't know if that's going to be part of your presentation, but ADUs, I think, if you looked into some of those stats, made a big difference in the housing that we provide to our citizens.
Yeah.
Versus the quarter acre, half acre lot.
Yeah, and the state is looking at projections for population projections that And they have to take those into account. Utah County is one of the fastest growing counties. The Wasatch Front as a whole is skyrocketing and one of the fastest growing metropolitan statistical areas in the country. So then back to this. So these were the three options for municipalities to consider from the House Bill 462. So your option one, you do your three basic strategies with an implementation. You've met the base requirement. You're in compliance with state law. That's it. Option two, you pick new strategies and I still never fixed that implementation. I'm so embarrassed. Pick new strategies and corresponding implementation timeline for each. That meets your base requirement, and you're allowed to. You will be considered for possible priority funding, but you're just kind of in the big mix. Option three, you incorporate at least two strategies beyond the base requirement, so a total of 5, and adopt an implementation plan for each. And then you have reached priority consideration. You rise to the top for those allocations of CMB road funds. So strategies that we have listed here. Strategies 1, 3, 4, and 5 have been part of the city's moderate income plan since 2019. The only real change in any of these is the language that the state made changes to. Rather than assure, we have to facilitate, as you see in 1. In 2, it included the requirements about internal or detached ADUs. And in 4, it says zone or rezone rather than just rather than just to allow, but the particular direction to zone or rezone, and added the statement of a near a major transit investment corridor, which we have because of the upcoming Front Runner Station. And then amend land use regulations to allow for, rather than just encourage, high density or new moderate income residential development. And they included the phrase commercial or mixed use zones near major transit investment corridors. The only new strategy that would be part of our plan is number 2, demonstrate an investment in the rehabilitation of infrastructure that facilitates the construction of moderate income housing.
Carla,
Yes.
can I stop you there for a second?
Of course.
I've been reading over that and over that red sentence there, and I'm not getting my head around that. Can you give me an example of what that actually means?
Yeah.
Is that Springville Rising?
No,
No,
but
unfortunately.
it does.
And you missed it.
I'll give you a quick one. They'll understand, Carla. We've talked in the front runner area, we've talked about it's designed for a certain level of zoning. If we expanded the sewer line there to allow for additional housing, that would meet that requirement.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I got
So that is one of the ways. So then, as part of that, demonstrate investment in the rehabilitation or expansion of infrastructure that facilitates the construction of moderate income. I feel like this is kind of a resounding thing with me because I'm back on the PIDs. Like, that's all you guys ever hear from me. So part of the strategy and implementation plan was for the adoption of a public infrastructure district policy that can utilize impact fees for residential development. It would require a dedicated moderate income housing units within the PID boundaries. That would be the public benefit that we talk about, would have to be provided by the developer in exchange for being allowed to enter into a PID, as we've talked about this in the past. And so in exchange for the benefits to it, the developer would provide those dedicated, and those are deed restricted moderate income housing units. It would increase the number of moderate income units in new residential developments. We could each, as we've talked about in PID policies, those could be set up by specific governing documents depending upon the number of units that are coming in, however we choose to do that as a creating entity. We would utilize development agreements to control the MIH unit set aside, and the adoption of the public infrastructure policy and establishment of evaluation criteria. That would be one of the steps that we would have to take. And then staff would review at the policy and present to the city council, where you would make the adoption of that. And then with the adoption of the policy, it would be the policy would be expected to be completed by the end of the year 2022. So, but I don't have it. Oh, I was hoping there was going to be like a cool slide after that, but I got nothing. So sorry, guys.
I would just jump in to clarify, or just to provide a little bit of context. The recommendation from the Planning Commission was to recommend approval. If you can go back, Carla, to the strategies. The Planning Commission's recommendation was to recommend approval of strategies 1, 3, 4, and 5, and not the addition of the new strategy number 2. Staff, our recommendation is still to adopt that number 2 because we don't feel it mandates that we necessarily do anything specific, but that it gives us the opportunity to evaluate how we would meet that policy and move up from the middle tier, which really doesn't give us any benefit, to the priority tier to receive funding across a number of different funding programs. But Planning Commission did recommend their recommendation did not include number 2, and I think a lot of it had to do with their hesitancy over the understanding of the public infrastructure districts. And this doesn't even need to necessarily do that, but we did have to come up with some type of implementation steps behind this, and it seemed like including it in a potential PID policy was the simplest way to implement that. So that's why our recommendations are not parallel.
Yeah, so when-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Does rehabilitation mean the same as create new or extend? Rehabilitation of infrastructure sounds to me like we would enlarge the sewer plant, or like we've done with the water with the new water tank. That to me is rehabilitation. So does that cover extension into new areas, like the example I'm talking about?
We're increasing capacity within the existing system as well as extending the system.
So rehab, that word covers both new and rehabbing what we already have.
I would defer to the people that drafted
That may
this
just
to
be
tell me
semantics, and I
exactly,
don't mean to play that game.
No,
but
it's a good question.
Yes, and that we don't have any direction more from the state legislature other than that.
They use the word rehabilitation.
They did. This is directly from their strategies that they outlined in the legislation. To Josh's note, when I make this, when I fill out my report to the state and turn all this in, we just have to show that we have some type of measurable implementation strategy. Now, we may go back after the public infrastructure district policy is presented to you further down the road, and the city may determine, no, that this is not viable for us, it's not in our best interest, we're not going to adopt a public infrastructure district policy. Then that would just mean that next year, when we go through this process again, we would just look at strategies, we would report that our city council chose not to do that and are looking for other ways to implement that strategy. So this doesn't mean that if you do this, your hands are tied and you must adopt the public infrastructure district policy. It just means that that is a strategy that we as staff have felt is a way to help meet this requirement, put us in priority funding for this round of financing, helps us to meet the requirements for this year's moderate income housing element, and allows us to revisit it next year, like we do with all of these strategies, and prepare for the fact that the state legislature will probably make more changes like they do every year to moderate income housing. So nothing in this ties your hands. Like we said, 1, 3, 4, and 5 have already been in. We have already made progress on these. The city has adopted an ADU that allows for internal or detached units in residential zones. We have already, with the station area plan that we'll be working on with the UTA moving forward for the front runner, we're already looking at the investment by major transit investment corridors. So all of this has already been done. The only new one is 2. And like I said, is just we have the public infrastructure district. It fit in well with what we were doing, as we've already started to discuss this with the council and explored this and had presentations on it, that it was something that would help us to meet that threshold for the additional funding.
I think that the PID all by itself, because we are in discussion of that, and we haven't made a decision, but that would give us the ability to approve ordinance 18/2022 because we are looking at it. If it doesn't pass, to your point, but I think even as Chris mentioned, I think it's not just a PID. There's other areas that we can make decisions you know, as we watch Lakeside Landing grow, that in itself gives us a lot of opportunity for rehabilitation type of events where we could like, oh, you know what, we're going to pull this extra line out here for moderate income housing, because what a great place to, you know, create that type of an environment where you've got, you know, all types of density and income housing, or levels of income housing.
Yes, exactly. So,
The other thing that bugs me about this is that the state assumes that everybody's starting from the exact same spot, where we already have plenty.
We got lots of mobile home
We've got
parks.
lots of this, and I can't say what Mapleton has, but they don't have what we have. And if they add anything, they've met this,
Well, they got higher
and we've
property.
got to now add more to meet this.
yeah,
So I don't like that.
yeah.
But what do we do?
I wish we could, yes, I wish we had some options there. Speaker Wilson and I have discussions about this all the time, but I have yet to persuade him. So, but any other questions?
So is this, I think you mentioned that this is reviewed each year?
Yes,
Is
it's
that
reviewed
correct?
each year, and like I said, right now.
we're gonna see this again.
So, yeah, there are already held bills, they're called boxcar bills, they're already in the state legislature for the 2022 session addressing the moderate income housing. So,
There's been lengthy discussions about kind of mandating portions of this with penalties, so if the
That's
city's.
the part.
Yeah, that's the
part
part.
that's concerning.
yeah,
In every legislative session, so in a few months again, we're going to be up against the same challenges. What are they going to come out with? What are they going to throw at us? You know, with no.
So with those mandates, there's penalties if we don't. Is there funding from the state if we do?
well, they kind of try to pretend it's a carrot, but it's more like they hit you with the
Yeah.
carrot. So the carrot becomes the stick as well. So they say, oh, if you do these 5, then you're for priority C and B road funds, which we should be
already
getting C and B
Yeah,
road
we
funds
have.
anyway. But now they just say, well, even though you're supposed to be considered, we're only really going to consider these ones that have followed our instructions of bumping up to 5. So, like I said, the carrot often becomes the stick they're hitting you with. So,
Withdrawal of the carrot.
yeah, we'll withdraw the carrot. So that's pretty much what we have going forward with this, and we'll be watching that in the next session to
Yeah,
see
I
what they'll
think
be.
as you meet with legislators in the coming weeks and months, I think that's a big part of building some type of consensus on this, because really where the legislature is switching to is completely removing local control, which we heard significant elements with. Your hands get more and more tied about what you can and can't do. In fact, even much of the vesting discussion tonight is been taken away by the state as well. So you have very few tools in your toolbox. They continue to chip away at those. So kind of expressing that frustration and sharing the citizens' viewpoint is going to be important in the next few months.
Yeah, the legislature tends to be very developer-friendly.
And I think a good example is the mother-in-law apartment that we can't regulate anymore. If they wa-
You can. It's like, here, we'll let you play in this big of a
Yeah,
sandbox,
but
where
if
before you
people
could do
want it,
anything you wanted.
they
yeah.
can have it if they want.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, yeah, it will be a fun session. So,
Well, to that end, I'll make the motion and include item 2, that we approve ordinance 18/2022, amending the moderate income housing element of the Springville City General Plan.
I'll second the motion.
So there's been a motion and a second. It's a roll call vote. Mike, yes. Chris?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Carla.
thank you very
Thanks.
much, council.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you.
Thank you. Okay,
We don't have do we have, okay.
Go home.
All right. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Just real quickly, I mean, we very much appreciate, thank you for coming out. Thank you for sticking here for, it's almost 10 o'clock. I mean, obviously, it's great to get the emails from you. It's great to get the feedback. It doesn't always end up necessarily how you want it to end up, but just very much appreciate the feedback. We don't know what to say or how to represent if we don't get that feedback and communication. So I appreciate the fact. It's too bad that half have already left. I understand the reasoning for doing so, but just really appreciate you coming out tonight, participating in the process. These meetings are also televised. This one is at least, not the earlier meeting. So you have access on the web if you can't make it out.
I know a lot of people mentioned having difficulty getting the notices. I don't know the exact website. What is the state? Yeah, the state requires that we send out public notices. And it has a subscription button. And there is a subscription button where you can subscribe. And if you just Google Utah Public Notice website, it will come up. I have no idea what the actual website is. And it allows you. Is that what it is? And then it's an opt-in email instead of us force feeding you an email by gathering your emails and sending stuff to you and us. Or you have to opt into this email, which all of you are very involved. And it allows you to get staff reports. Those are posted there. You're able to read them. If there's any amendments or changes in those. Staff report. Yes, all of them are on there. Yeah, and it was all available. Thursday. Yeah, every single thing that is in that staff report is available online. So we encourage you, if any of you have any problems or have any questions, you're welcome to contact me. I can walk you through subscribing to those. Okay? It is, if you just Google Utah Public Notice.gov, unless I'm wrong, but Google will pull it up.
Is it,
I just Googled. Yeah, I do know. I'm on there every day. It's just an automatic. Yeah, so just, if you just Google Utah
on the
Public
website,
Notice,
so
it will come up.
Well, it's because citizens ask for it all the time.
And
So
you'll
I
even
have
follow
it in my,
the state legislation as well.
If you go back.
I just send them the agendas right there. You just send them.
And can also tell you just that this group, I can speak from experience, seeing what they do. I mean, Mike was riding his bike. I don't know if you're still doing that. Riding your bike all around town, talking to people, just for kicks.
Yeah, I do that.
So, anyway, any of us will be happy to take.
I get pulled over and, hey, wait, come here.
We'll be happy to take phone calls, emails. We may not get to them timely, but we work on it. So I'm just saying, everybody here is very open and willing to discuss these things. So appreciate you again participating tonight.
And by the way, you might be interested to know, we did get an email today from one of your neighbors that was in favor of 45 feet and the reciprocal easements. And she did say that she had a lot of neighbors that were in favor of it.
Maybe
So
there's a plan from the developer. Who knows?
I mean, who knows? I mean, I
We
don't
did get
know.
the email.
We did get an email about
Corroborate that.
and we do respond to those emails as timely as we possibly
I
can.
didn't respond to all of them this time.
I did.
Well, good for you. I didn't. I couldn't get them all.
Did you motion?
oh,
Did we
Did
second?
we get a
I did
motion to
motion.
close?
Yeah, I said,
motion.
Liz
I said, can I
Did we
have
get
a
second?
motion to close?
I'll second.
Chris goes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
We're closed and dismissed.
You don't have to be here.